everyone, my name is Katie and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I'm going to be talking about my favorite metal albums of 2024 with some singles and other new releases mixed in as well. So this has been a really fun year for me when it comes to music. A lot of my older favorites, like old bands I haven't listened to in years, came out with new albums this year and new singles. So it's been a lot of fun, and I've also been exploring a little bit. I feel like my tastes have changed a lot since 2023 and 2022. I found a lot of bands that I really like that I had never heard of before this year. So I'm going to talk about all the things that kind of ended up on my Spotify Wrapped and what I listened to the most throughout the year. And I'm going to give them all ratings, each piece of work. And we're going to find out by the end of this what my top album of the year is going to be. So the first album on my 2024 album list is Morbid Saint, Swallowed by Hell. So this is one of those old favorites that I was talking about. I was so happy to see that they were back for blood with just this menacing, never relenting album. I love it. It starts off super fast with Rise from the Ashes, a super fast intro with a badass guitar solo. It sets the tone for the album right off the bat. There's just a lot going on in this one. It's a very fast, thrash, perfect death thrash album. It's exactly what you would expect. I will say throughout some of the album it was a little bit repetitive and I get burnt out. It's just in your face fast. Oh my gosh, the drumming on this album is crazy. We have two classic members back. We have Jim on the guitar and Paul, I believe is his name, on the vocals. It's Pat. His name is Pat on the vocals, my bad. But yeah, two classic members, which is really cool. And we have a bass intro on Bloody Floors, which I really liked. There's one song that has this drumming moment, double bass. It's intense. I'll put the name of the song here because I can't remember. But there's just, I think the drumming is my favorite standout from this album. That's one of my favorite instruments when it comes to thrash metal. That's always what does it for me. Lots of super fun, melodic guitar breaks and guitar solos. And overall, I feel like it was exactly what I want from a Morbid Saint album. Man, it came out so many months ago now. There's so many other things that came out that made me kind of forget. But I had a time with this one whenever I first heard it. It was on repeat for a while there. I would say I did do a score song by song of what I would totally rate it as, and I have it down as an 8.5 out of 10, which is really high. I don't give a lot of things at 8.5, so Morbid Saint did a great job this year. The next album on the list is Fire by Kittie. So I've been a huge fan of Kittie for many years, and I just love that it's an all-female band, which is so just badass to me. They were actually one of the first bands I ever discovered that were all-female, and it just makes it more relatable for me. And they're one of the heavier female bands. You know, a lot of times you'll have a female fronted band and they're fine and all, but they're never really heavy enough. They don't do as much growling and that sort of stuff. Kittie always just hits that itch that I have for a nice, badass woman band. And everyone knows how iconic their album Spit is. It came out 25 years ago or something. But when I first heard the first single from this album titled Eyes Wide Open, I was so excited. I was like, the girls are back, baby. This album starts off really strong. I think the first track is the title track, Fire, and it starts off really hard and it has these vocals that kind of feel like this siren, luring you to your death. It's beautiful and brutal all at once. I noticed the vocals on this album feel very trained. I think it's Morgan Lander who does the vocals here. It sounds like she's become more technically trained and knows how to growl now without doing damage to her voice. It just sounded very proper technique. The track Are You Entertained is probably my favorite track from the whole album. The lyrics to that one are very relatable to the current phase of my life. And I don't know, this one, I hate to make it all about being women. I know that's annoying when people do that. But the thing is, it really does inspire me. I want to be in a band like this someday. They inspire me to pick up my guitar more often and learn more. And I don't know, just watching women like this and their long career, it really empowers me. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a no-skip album. There are a couple songs I get a little burnt out on and kind of want to skip through. I've noticed I kind of prefer the later half of the album, but there's not necessarily any bad songs. I would say if I have to rate the entire album song for song, it would come out to a score of 7.5 out of 10, which is honestly pretty good. My favorite aspect are the vocals. They're very like spine chilling on a song like Eyes Wide Open, and there's some like groovy riffage here and there. The guitar work wasn't that impressive to me this time around. I don't know what it was. I was hoping for a little bit more like solo stuff. There is a little bit of that, but that's not really Kittie's strong suit, and that's okay. So this next album is going to be from a band that I had never heard of before this year, and I'm so glad I found them. And this is like something I found within the last 3 or 4 months, and it ended up on my Spotify Wrapped as one of my top listened to albums of the whole year. That's how much I listened to it in just a short amount of time. So this is going to be Frog Mallet's Dissection by Amphibian, I believe. It's frog themed metal. It's like slam metal. Some people call it like slamming beat down metal. You gotta really listen to it to understand what that means, you know, the whole beat down breakdown aspect. One thing I noticed in this genre and definitely on this album is the production quality is so good, and the drumming is really heavy in the mix. That's like a huge part of this is the percussion, and it almost has this like hip-hop trap sort of production quality. Like you could play this on a really nice speaker system and it has like a bunch of bass. It's like boo, you know, makes your chest rumble kind of stuff. Love that. I definitely recommend, if you listen to this album using a nice pair of headphones, listen to it in a car with a good amp and subs and all that stuff. Like, the production quality is impeccable. I'm pretty sure this band uses a drum machine sometimes, but I actually like that. I know that's kind of controversial within metal. Some people like hate drum machines. I know Mortician, another death metal band, they get a lot of hate for using a drum machine, but I think it's cool. I think it sounds great, especially with its production quality. Like I said, this band, they really embrace the frog vocals. People always make jokes that slam vocalists sound like frogs, and they just go all out. They're like, why don't we make a whole frog themed band, a frog themed album? And they do a really good job. A song like Lord of the Pond, it has kind of silly lyrics, but the music, it's so badass. The intro to that song is so nasty, and this album actually has quite a few features from other bands on it as well, which I really like. You have Devin Swank, who's the vocalist of Send Guides to Sugarbog. Don't even make me try to say that. I've tried a million times. I've tried to learn how it's pronounced. I can't figure it out. Bullfrog Beatdown makes me want to annihilate some nerd in a mosh pit. It's one of those songs, it gives you chills. It's so badass, and it's fun because you don't have to take it so seriously. It's like, this is just badass music to bang your head to. You don't have to really think about it too deeply. And they have some funny sound bites mixed in. Like there's an Alex Jones, they're making the frogs gay sound bite, which iconic. So yeah, sick vocals on this. Some cool bass mixed in with the drumming. I really like that they focus on like the rhythm section aspect of this band, and I gotta know how they get that guitar tone. A lot of bands within this like realm and this genre have a specific guitar tone that is so satisfying, and I can't even really describe it. Another band I could think of that's kind of similar is like Bonginator, which I think they collaborate. I think they might be playing a show together soon or something like that. It's just like a thing in a certain realm of death metal. I want to know how they get that tone. I would love to recreate that myself. I would say this is my fun album of the year. This is the one that I thoroughly just have a good time every time. It's not as long. There's only like a few songs on it, so it's not really like a full-length album. Like, it's not 12 songs like some of the others. But I've come to learn that sometimes too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. You know, I like the shorter and sweeter albums every now and then. The ones that aren't as drawn out, and they're not trying so hard to make an hour-and-a-half long album, you know. They just put out good songs, and that's all there is to it. I like that sometimes. Maybe it's just my short attention span, but I just think this is like the perfect length for an album. But I have listened to this album top to bottom many times, and I gave it, hear me out, I gave it a 9 out of 10. This is one of those bands that before like 2023, I probably wouldn't have ever given a chance, and I've listened to more things within this genre the past year, maybe 2 years, and I just think it's funny how much my tastes have changed, and I'm really down with Frog Mallet. The next album is going to be none other than Kerry King. The next album is going to be Kerry King's From the Hell I Rise. So, this new band, okay, it was highly anticipated for me, but I was very nervous about it. I was like, I've always said for many years, ever since 2016, that I think Slayer broke up at a really good time. I think they did a good job not to tarnish their legacy, because sometimes, let's be honest, sometimes when older bands stick around too long, they run out of inspiration and material, and their songs just get a little bit redundant, and it feels like they're making it just because they feel like they have to and not because they're passionate about it. So it's one of those things where I was like, is it going to be like a diet Slayer? Is it going to have the vibe of Kerry King just wants Slayer back and this is the best he can get? Well, the thing is, I was pleasantly surprised when I first heard the first single, Idle Hands. I was surprised. Now, don't get me wrong, it definitely has Slayer vibes. It's just gonna be that way if Kerry King is involved. But it also has other parts and other members from various other successful bands that make it feel a little bit different. It obviously is like within the same genre. It's like thrash or maybe death thrash, but it still has its own feel to it. When I first heard rumors of this band, I got really excited, especially when I found out Paul Bostaph was going to be the drummer, which is insane. We have the singer from Death Angel, which works perfectly. We have members from, is it Hell Yeah and Machine Head? Like, all great bands, and they all bring something different to the table. The album truly feels like Kerry King is back with a vengeance. You know, he was always the member of Slayer that didn't want them to break up and wanted them to still do things. And this is kind of his album being like, yeah, I'm back. You can't get rid of me. And he named the band after himself, which is kind of iconic. And I don't know, Kerry King is like kind of confusing to me. There's been times where I'm not the hugest fan of him, but I also think he's like super talented, super iconic. A lot of times Jeff Hanneman gets the credit for writing Slayer stuff, but Kerry King had a huge hand in that as well, so let's put some respect on his name. The album is fast and menacing, exactly what you would want from a Kerry King thrash metal album. There is one song called Crucifixation, and it's a little bit slower, and it feels like a breather throughout the album. And it's weird, that's kind of my favorite one. And I've always done this with Slayer stuff as well. I always preferred their slower stuff, like Seasons in the Abyss. I don't know what it is, but I like Crucifixation. I think that's my favorite track from the album. The track Tension has my favorite guitar solo. And overall, this is another one that I don't really like to sit through the entire album all at once. I do get burnt out a little bit. If anything, I might start at Crucifixation and just work my way down to the end of the album. But that's just usually how it is for me. I've grown to, with thrash metal, I've grown to like EPs that are like 5 songs long. And you know, like the 10 and 12 song albums are harder for me to get through because I love thrash, but a lot of times it just feels like all in your face, super fast, never relenting. You don't really get a breather. So yeah, for that reason, this album had a little bit of a lower score for me. The score I wrote last night upon another listen was 7 out of 10, which is great. It wouldn't be on my albums of the year list if it wasn't like a 7 or higher. So not bad, Kerry King. I'm glad you came back. This next album is more of like an honorable mention from me because it's ranked a little bit lower than some of the others, but I still felt like I need to talk about it because it's a band that I really like, and I was excited when they released new stuff. The album in question is Hellish Expectations by Midnight, and I just love this band because they have like a super old school thrash sound to them, very similar to like the early Slayer albums. And one of the main tracks from this album was FOAL, which stands for Fuck Off and Live. And I love that motto. That was my favorite song from the entire album. I think it was like the main single. Love that. Love the energy of that. It's the last song on the album, so it's a good way to just write it off, sign it off, see you guys later, fuck off and live. I gave this one a 7 out of 10 just because I don't have to have the whole album. I could listen to 3 songs and I'm done. So for me, it's a 7 out of 10 for that reason, which isn't terrible. But that's why it's kind of just an honorable mention, because I feel like there's other things I liked more this year. But I did have like a short period where I enjoyed this one. There is a different album from Midnight that I like more. It's from like a few years back. I feel like I'm comparing all the stuff they do to that one album because I like it so much. So maybe that's the problem here. But yeah, I just didn't rank as high as some of the others. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break from talking about albums from this year because there's a lot of singles that came out, just singular songs that I really liked. And I feel like it'd be crazy to not talk about them because some of them were my most listened to songs of the year and they were released all by themselves. The first one on my list is Blood Diner by Bonginator. I am a hardcore Bonginator fan. I've been a fan for like 2 years now. Love them. I'm wearing their shorts right now. Like, one of my favorite bands. I'm so corny, but I'm literally such a huge fan, and their album last year was one of my most listened to albums, and I love that they released something this year. I think they have some collabs that they've done as well, but Blood Diner is so much fun. Blood Diner is sort of this like indie horror movie from the 80s, and it's insane. Please watch it if you're into that sort of like cheesy kind of bad horror, but also insane at the same time. That's what the song is based on and all the lyrics. But man, oh man, I would compare Bonganator a lot to Frog Mallet. They kind of have a similar style when it comes to production and the way that they sort of execute the lyrics. Eric from Bonganator, the way that he does each phrase of his lyrics is so on point. Like, I don't know how to explain it unless you've heard it, but like, he's clear with what he's saying. Like, he's using harsh vocals, but you can kind of understand what he's saying, and each phrase is like perfectly fit within the rhythm of the song. I don't know, super satisfying. I feel like there's just some really skilled songwriting in this band, and they make death metal fun. It's so fun. I love them. Oh my god, another band that necessarily doesn't always take things super seriously. Some of their stuff is like concept-y in a way, and it's just such a good time. I am passionate about this band, and I want to see them go places because they're so good. They've done really well for themselves, actually. They've been doing a lot of like touring and collabing with other bands and stuff, and god, I love to see it. One of my favorite bands ever. This specific song, Blood Diner, has this really fun like synth intro, and like you don't expect it to be a death metal song. It's so cool. The next one is a more recent release that I covered on the channel, and that's A Work of Art by Ice Nine Kills. If you guys have seen much of my channel, you know I'm a diehard Terrifier fan, and that was just the perfect collab. I'm so glad they finally did a Terrifier song, and the music video was pure cinema, by the way. That was all just a huge moment. Terrifier 3 being released, and then that song and music video, and seeing Art the Clown massacring a mosh pit. Just the whole thing was insane, but in a good way. It was a fun little moment this year, so I had to mention that. Municipal Waste released, or I guess re-released, Tango and Thrash. So it was mostly just like a redo album, but I really enjoyed it. I had a little moment with it. It came out in a time that I was traveling in Europe, and it's weird. I'll like forever tie my Europe trip. I was in like Italy and I'll forever tie it to the album. I don't know. It's just like every time I listen to it, think of Italy, and it's a really fond memory. Ghost had their film in theaters, which is really cool. It's Right Here, Right Now, and they released a song for the end of that film called The Future is a Foreign Land, and I love it. It's got this, it's not a metal song. Honestly, a lot of Ghost isn't very metal these days. They've reached that point where I can finally admit that, but I loved it. I thought it was a beautiful song. Had a cute meaning. I like how it tied in with the lore of the characters in the film, and I had a moment with that one. I listened to that song on repeat until I was so sick of it I never wanted to hear it again. I tend to do that. There's one album I really enjoyed this year, but it didn't come out this year. It came out in 2020, and it's called Aggressive Hauntings by Midnight Priest, and it's a perfect mix of King Diamond / Merciful Fate and Judas Priest. It is like, if you like those bands, you're gonna like Midnight Priest. They got this sort of like spooky lyrical themes, you know, they got the high notes and the falsettos like King Diamond, and musically it's a lot like Judas Priest. So if that's your vibe, you're gonna like that album. I listened to that one a lot this year. And now it's time to talk about my favorite album of 2024. And the messed up part about this is it's not actually an album. It's a 5-song EP. But like I said, sometimes I like the short, sweet ones. That's just kind of how I am. I liked this one so much that I wouldn't mind if it was longer, because there's no skippable songs for me on this one. But it's gonna be Noxious Concoctions by Ghoul. And it's a death thrash album, but it has this sort of like Halloween feel to it. There's a lot of special effects and voice effects that remind me of those like Halloween cassette tapes that are called like Spooky Sounds. You guys know the ones? It's like, it's a very Halloween themed band. All the lyrics in the songs are spooky, same with the album artwork, and that's right up my alley. I feel like this album is so specifically tailored to my taste that it's perfect. It's obvious, it's a given that it's going to be my favorite album of the year. And I don't think I had heard of Ghoul up until this year. I think this is the first thing I ever heard from them. I think it got recommended to me on Spotify, and it made me go back to some of their older stuff. And man, I love me some Ghoul. They have that sort of like raw and unpolished production quality, which is kind of contradictory to what I said earlier, because I was like praising the stuff that has like the better production. But sometimes I like that raw, unpolished sound. It kind of just sounds like a band playing in their garage. I don't know, it feels more like a real band. You don't feel like it's a computer playing a song. It feels like real people. I enjoy that. And especially in this specific genre, I just feel like it's more real. This is another one where they focus a lot on the drumming in the production, and I love that. I'm just a sucker for having my ears just drilled, you know? 1-900 Deathline is literally my anthem song at this point. Shotgun Gulch, I think, was the one I listened to the most on this album. Rat Liquor. The name is so funny, but Rat Liquor is probably the best song of the album for me because it gives every member a chance to shine. There's the best guitar solo on the album. Then you get like this little drum break solo moment. There's a bass solo. Every member has a chance to shine, and I really think that's my favorite one on the whole album. Not to mention the title track is insane, and I just feel like this EP is a perfect length. I know I shouldn't be calling it my album of the year because it's not long enough, but sometimes you just need to create some good songs and dip. Fuck off and live, as Midnight would say. You know, you don't have to make a 12-song album. It's fine. This was my #1 most listened to piece of work, I guess that's what you could call it, of the year, at least on my Spotify Wrapped. So I had to give this one a really high rating. I went song for song. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10, y'all. Ghoul is like one of my favorite bands. It's funny, I love Ghost, and now I have Ghoul too, so it kind of feels like if Ghost made a death thrash album. Like the early Ghost albums, if they were a little bit heavier, I feel like they could do something like this. So it's my vibe. It was made for me. Now I know some people are going to be wondering, where the heck is Judas Priest on this list? I know they released an album this year, but I'm gonna be honest, guys, I was not a fan. I don't really remember much of it. I really only ever gave it one full listen, so maybe that's just me. Maybe I need to listen to it again. But for me, it was one of those situations where an older band came back and it just wasn't hitting the same for me. And I hate to be that way because I like to give the older ones a chance. Like I loved Metallica's 72 Seasons last year, and like I said, I liked Morbid Saint's album. I like Kerry King's album. You know, I give the oldies a chance, but something about the Judas Priest one just didn't hit for me this year. So my favorite album of the year is Noxious Concoctions by Ghoul, and my favorite song of the year on its own is Blood Diner by Bonginator. I never tire of it. It was #1 on my Spotify this year. It's crazy that it was just that one song and I listened to it endlessly and still do. Haven't tired of it yet, and it's been out for a while now. So those are my favorite albums of 2024. So let me know in the comments down below what you listened to the most this year, and maybe let me know what new releases you didn't like as much as well. But that's all I have for this video, so thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!